And then some other news in the Democratic primary that I wanted to share. And I also don't think this is much of a surprise. And still, it is news-inducing, news-making. And that is that polls are showing that Sanders is leading in New Hampshire and is tied for first now in Iowa with less than a month to go before the 2020 caucuses. So that is very exciting. I'm happy to see the polls finally echoing a lot of the things that I feel like I hear and see everywhere inside of my bubble. So a CBS News tracking poll released Sunday found that Bernie Sanders is leading the Democratic presidential field in New Hampshire and is tied for first with less than a month to go. It is Sanders, Biden, and Buttigieg. So Biden, and Buttigieg. At least we have some alliteration in the top three candidates of the Iowa caucus. So what are your thoughts on those?
Well, alliteration is not something I'm looking for.
What? That's not important to you? What the hell?
But it's interesting. They're all sort of stuck in this particular CBS YouGov poll. They have them all at 23%. I don't put a lot of stock in particularly YouGov polls. I don't know if you've ever taken a YouGov poll, but they're about as slanted as they come. And that's not exactly, different than a lot of other major polls that we see. So one of the things that I keep coming back to is, I'm being told that there are all these echo chambers, right? Be careful about being in an echo chamber. So social media, make sure you hear from all different voices and stuff like that. So I really try to engage with people. I try to reach out, talk to a lot of people, a lot of different stripes. Yeah. I'm just not seeing these Biden voters.
No, nowhere. I haven't met a single person.
Years, for like a year and a half, right, since the campaign started. And he has the same amount of. That seems weird, right? That just seems weird. Like for someone that's like, I can't explain that. If we are to take the polls as they are on their face as being done on the up and up, and that's really what it is, then what we're looking at is a 3-4-way race in Iowa. And then, imagine it plays out like that. Imagine it plays out something like this, where you've got like a 3-way split. Warren is a little bit below, but Biden, Buttigieg, and Sanders basically split Iowa. And then it goes to New Hampshire. Well, Bernie kind of wins New Hampshire, right? Like that's certainly his neck of the woods.
Definitely.
He's got a commanding lead.
Didn't he win New Hampshire against Clinton? Yes.
Yep. Okay. He has a commanding lead there. That just looks good for him. So I think, that's part of why I think over the last week you've seen a lot of the mainstream press finally begin to address Bernie Sanders. Like, okay, he has money and he's winning in the polls. And so all of the things that we say to people about why he can't win, about how he doesn't have money and isn't winning in the polls aren't true anymore. It's like he's breaking
records, though. It's not even that he just has money. He's literally breaking records. 23% in Iowa, my ass. That's how I feel.
Who are these Biden supporters? Just who are they?
I haven't, even when Biden was supposedly very much leading in the polls at the beginning of all of this, I don't think I knew a single Biden supporter. Not a single one. Not even from these people that I talk to who are like, oh, what about electability? Everybody knows that Biden's not electable. Everybody. His teeth will fall out on stage. Literally. They fell out on stage.
Yes.
And you think Trump isn't going to hand his ass to him? What?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, and then also one of the things that I wanted to bring up inside of this article is that the poll also found that Sanders supporters in Iowa and New Hampshire are more, quote, enthusiastic than the backers of Democratic contenders, which is really good news. And the reason that's really great news in Iowa is that people have to get their ass out to the caucus to vote, which is a really big deal when you are a person who has a regular job. Voting takes place on Tuesdays when people work their regular jobs. And also generally weather is really shitty. And so it's also extra hard, especially for older voters, to get out to the polls in Iowa. I'm personally from Iowa, so I know that the caucuses are not well attended. In fact, so much so that I literally make phone calls to my friends in Iowa before the elections to tell them to go
sure that they go
to the caucus and vote for Bernie Sanders, because I know one person in those caucuses makes such a big difference. So that's really exciting that the Sanders supporters are more enthusiastic. So even if these polls are accurate, which I'm with you, Paul, I actually don't believe them to be accurate. Anytime you look at any thread about any Democratic primary candidate, it is swarmed by Bernie supporters. Swarmed. And like, no candidate is safe from the Bernie swarm. I swear it.
Yeah, I mean, it's got dedicated fans.
Yeah, exactly. And those dedicated fans are going to make it out to the caucus to vote. So I am feeling very hopeful in light of everything that is going on right now. It's very hard to feel hopeful. And, you know, I think as long as we keep fighting that good fight, keep spreading the word, keep talking to people about what's so, I think we can win.
So I'm that guy that's like, hey, and I'm gonna not be hopeful because everyone else is. Look, so think back 2016. I forget what the exact numbers are, but I'm gonna rough estimates. I feel like the Democratic primary voters vote totals were like 10 times less than the general, right? I think you had like 100 million people, 120 million people end up voting in the general, and it was like 10 million people in the entire country for the Democratic primaries.
Wow.
Hillary versus Bernie. That's total. Like, what? Get out and vote in the primaries. That is the most important thing that you can do.
That's when we actually have a choice. That's when we
actually have a choice, and it's right now in the primaries. And a couple of other things I wanted to point out that are good for Bernie Sanders, and I'm just wondering how they're going to try and screw him over this time. That's all I can think about is how are they going to try and screw him. They're going to try. I know they're going to try and screw him.
I'm asking myself the same question, right?
Because like he's doing really well in California, and California is no longer the last state that's voting. It's now part of Super Tuesday. Are they going to do the weird provisional ballots thing like they did in California last time? I mean, we had over 20 states last cycle that there were major discrepancies between the exit polls, and basically the exit polls were outside the margin of error for what the machine count should have said, which indicated that there may have been some fractional machine voting going on, some election fraud. There's a difference between voter fraud and election fraud. Election fraud is when the government does it. Voter fraud is when a voter does it. Republicans will complain about voter fraud, which isn't really a thing, but election fraud is alive and well. And so this type of ballot stuffing / fractional, voting, is some of that going to go on? How are they going to do it? They're going to come after Bernie.
Well, the DNC can pick whomever they want, regardless of voting anyway, right?
Right. They have won that in court.
I feel like the brazenness of everything that's been going on recently with the Democrats as well as the Republicans, part of me is like, they're just going to be like, man, fuck you. This is not our candidate. Sorry.
So while they legally can do that, there is the... So we were talking about this in the context of war, and maybe we'll pick up that conversation later, but this is very much the same. While the Democratic Party could just be like, we can't have Bernie, shut it down, it's Biden, everyone, no voting this time.
Too bad, so sad, bye-bye.
They would legally be allowed to do that.
Right.
Right? But they would lose all legitimacy.
For sure.
Right? There would be no way they could do that and get away with it and have people be like, well, what? Now, the fact that they did it, they made that argument in court, some people thought would make a little bit more waves, but it has been pretty buried. But if you literally said we're not having the vote anymore, or we're overturning what the votes were, if you're really blatant about it, people will get mad. Right?
Yeah. And the Democratic Party would lose legitimacy. You are right about that. And there's no saying that they won't do it.
Right. So how are they going to try to completely cheat everything over and also simultaneously maintain their legitimacy? How are they going to try to do that? That's what they're going to try to do.
They'll just be like, all right, well, we'll just secretly back Trump, I suppose.
Maybe.
Bernie's more dangerous to what they're up to than Trump anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have your elite class that is sort of not, they don't care what party, it's not party centric, it's not part of any ideology, it's just about how can I make the most for me forever.
For me and my friends.
Yeah. All for me and nothing for anyone else. That kind of mentality. They don't care.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, Bernie, we can't have that. All for me. None of this spreading the wealth around stuff.
Well, and what's really even more dangerous about that is I don't know that it's like an actively like conscious thing for them. I think that there is just this feeling of just that like what Bernie's policies are unworkable for America. And I think it's just really misled. So